Hi everybody, and welcome to the channel Think Outside the Board. I am your host Brian Toohey, and today I am doing a first impressions video on Yokohama Duel. Before I start, if you're new to the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. And also I just wanted to let you know that this being a first impressions video means that it's not a full teach. I'm not going to teach you the entire game. I'm not going to give you a full review. This is just designed to give you a peek at the game, at the way that it plays and its mechanics, and I'm going to tell you what I thought of the game after one play. So to start things off, Yokohama Duel is published by TMG, Tasty Minstrel Games. They've published a bunch of games, including the original Yokohama, and I'm going to list the games that they've published here. It's designed by Hisashi Hayashi, who has also designed Yokohama and Trains. Those are his two big games. And there's 4 artists working on this one. Scott Hart, who's worked on the Aeon's End series, At the Gates of Loyang, and Luna. Hisashi Hayashi himself, who also did the art for the original Yokohama. Adam P. McIver, who worked on the original Yokohama, Crusaders Thy Will Be Done, Ex Libris, Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, and several other games that I'm listing up there. And then finally, Ryo Niyama, who worked on Yokohama and Trains. Now, this is a 2-player game. It is specifically a 2-player game. It is exactly a 2-player game. So it plays 2 players. It's kind of a head-to-head game. There isn't a solo mode, so it is exclusively a 2-player game. It's medium light, and essentially it's worker placement with set collection, some hand management, and resource management. Now, I am going to show you the board and the locations on the board and some of the mechanics, and then I'll tell you what I thought about the game. So this is the whole board for Yokohama Duel, and I'm going to keep it on this wide angle for a moment just to kind of show you the various worker placement spots. Now, as you can see on this side of the board, it's set up so that both players are sitting on the same side of the board so that they're kind of looking at everything from the same perspective. There is another side of the board. On the back side of the board is another arrangement where the 2 player areas down here are set up on opposite sides of the board, and then all of the spaces and all of the cards and everything are in between them. The only downside to that is that you have red on one side and blue on the other, and then all of the buildings are facing one color, so the other color is essentially playing upside down. So you have the option to either play on opposite sides of the board, kind of head to head, but with all of the buildings facing one player. Or if neither player wants to kind of play upside down, you can play on this side where you're kind of sitting on the same side of the board and you're looking at it with the same perspective. Just to give you a quick look at the board, the 2-player version of the board. So you've got all of one player's stuff at the bottom, and the way I've kind of laid it out, you're seeing that it's going to be upside down for this player. But this does give you the ability to play on either side of the board, kind of head to head, and you'll have the cards running down the sides and all the locations in the middle. Now, before we kind of go down a little bit closer, which is what I'm going to do when I'm actually explaining things, I just wanted to give you this overview here, and you can see that there are a bunch of resources in the game. You've got silk, tea, imports, fish, and copper. So I've only placed 2 resources on each of these spaces because otherwise it can kind of get overflowing with resources, and I didn't want to block the actual worker placement spaces. But as you can see, above the silk is the silk mill, above the tea is the tea plantation, above the imports is customs, above the fishing, or above the fish is the fishing ground, and above the copper is the copper mine. So each of these locations has to do with the resources next to it. And in general, when you go to these places, you're going to get a certain amount of resources depending on the power of the card that you play. And as you see, as it goes up, let's just take, for example, the tea plantation. As the power of the card value that you're playing goes up, you're going to get more resources, so this will become a more powerful action. Now, the tea plantation is pretty straightforward. If you go there with a power level of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 resources. As you can see, that's the same for fish, but it's not the same for all of the resources. Over here with silk, you're not going to get anything for a 1 power rating, and you're going to need 2 to get 1 resources, 3 to get 2, 4 to get 3, or 5 to get 4. This same ratio is in effect over here in customs, And then over here in copper, it's even harder to get resources, so the first 2 power levels won't get you anything. You'll have to go use 3 power to get 1 resource, 4 to get 2, or 5 to get 3. And then finally we have the bank where you can get money, and again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 power will get you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 money. So those kind of 6 areas of the board are all very similar, but we've still got the laboratory, the church, Chinatown, and the port left. And I think to explain these various areas, I'm going to go into a different camera angle to get a little tighter in here and kind of show you what's going on. Before I do that though, quickly, I'm going to show you the player buildings. So these are going to come out during the game, during your turn. I've left them all stacked up here, kind of like a pre-game setup for the blue player. But for the red player, you can see the values. So anytime you build a shop here, it's going to cost 1 money. You see that as well over here. And each time you build a trading house, it's going to get more expensive. So the first one will cost you 4, second one will cost you 5, then 6, then 7. But you can see they're going to score you victory points at the end of the game. So every shop built will award you 1 victory point at the end of the game, and every trading house will score you 5 victory points at the end of the game. So this is a lot of victory points. This is a pretty good way to score big victory points for the end of the game, but obviously it's not cheap to do that. Okay, so these are essentially your workers. You're gonna start the game with 4 workers, which are cards. And at the start of the game, the first player, for instance, will start with 3 money and 1 of these extra power cards, which they can use to supplement the power of their workers, which are these cards. This over here is just a Kickstarter first player marker. It's kind of a nifty little metal ship. And then the other thing that I didn't know was going to happen in this edition is you've got these 4 little wooden workers. And so when we played it, we actually used the wooden workers to put out on the spaces just because they take a little less room than placing these cards out, which kind of get a little cumbersome. So what we would do is we would just place the wooden worker out, and when we actually played one of these cards, we just kind of put it in a discard pile. But the way that the cards work is each one is essentially a worker. You're going to get as many turns as you have cards in a round. So at the beginning of the game, that will be 4 turns because you'll have 4 of these power cards. The game is 4 rounds long. At the end of every round, you will have the ability to upgrade one of these power cards. Now, the lowest one is free to upgrade, and they get more expensive with each one, but they'll actually upgrade your power to the next level. So this guy only has 1 power, but for free, if you flip him over at the end of the first round, he'll now be a 2 power card, whereas it's going to cost 1 money to upgrade this guy to a 3, and the 3 will cost you 2 money to upgrade him to a 4, and the 4 will cost 3 money to upgrade him to a 5. So you ask, what are all these power icons? Well, these are the things that determine what you're going to get in any of these worker spots. So for instance, over here at the silk mill, you're going to be getting, 1, 2, or 3, or 4 resources for 2, 3, 4, or 5 power. Now, you can supplement your power in a lot of spaces. If you have this extra power card, you can always play that with a card and upgrade your card by 1 power. There are also these level 2 power cards that you can use, and occasionally you will be able to buy a foreign agent, which has 3 power, and these are basically one-time uses. So you'll be able to hire them at certain times during the game, and you will be able to use them once, and then they essentially go back into their little supply pile. But your turn will be made up of using these as workers, kind of placing them out on the board. There's one hard rule here, which is that they have to be played in ascending power order, which means you can't play a 4 power card if you have a 2 power card in your hand. So you're always playing in order from lowest to highest power, which creates a little bit of a puzzle for you because you may need something on the board and you may need a lot of it. But if you want to try to go there with a high power card, you're going to have to wait several turns to do that. And in the meantime, someone else could go there with a lower power card, essentially blocking the area. So the question then becomes, if there's a resource that you need really badly, Do you go there early in the round and maybe not get enough of what you actually need and try to supplement it some other way? Or do you wait until the time is ripe to go there and potentially miss your opportunity because somebody else has already gone there? Which brings a bigger question into the game that, yes, this is a game where in most cases, if you go to a spot, a worker spot, once someone goes there, no one else can go there. So you essentially block off that spot, which makes the game very tight and cutthroat and kind of ruthless. Now, another thing you should know is these high power bonus cards, and I'm going to sort of take you on a tour around the board here, and we're going to look at all the extra things that I didn't talk about when I was talking about specific resource areas. So over here, you have these high power bonus cards. When you go to any of the locations on the board, and you go in the 5+ spot, so that means you've played 5 or more power, it's got a little icon here, which is this high power bonus card. So if you achieve this rightmost section of any area, you're going to go over here, you're going to choose one of these high power bonus cards, and you're going to choose the number of power you spent, either 5, 6, or 7, or more, and you will get that bonus. So in this one, you're actually getting an additional brick for each thing. So if you went there with 5 power, you would get a brick. 6 would get you 2 bricks, 7 or more would get you 3 bricks. And anytime you use that ability to fulfill one of these high power bonus cards, you're just going to move it off the board, and then you're going to flip over another one. Also over here, let's talk about this Chinatown worker spot. So this is a really good way to exchange goods for money or vice versa. Now, when you go here with a certain number of power, you're going to get a certain number of exchanges. So for instance, this would get you a 4 power, would get you 4 exchanges. What is an exchange? Well, it's listed up here. So there's a conversion between resources. So for either tea or fish, you can exchange a good for a money or a money for a good. For copper or silk, you can exchange back and forth for 2 money. And then for these imports, you can buy imports for 4 money. And as you can see from the icon, it doesn't go the other way. So you can pay 4 money to get an import, but you can't exchange an import for 4 money. Anyway, this space right here is basically to help you find a way to get other resources from resources that you have if you need a way to kind of rebalance what you have in your personal supply. Now, if we look over here at the laboratory is going to allow you to get these tech cards. And as you see, any number of power, 1 to 5, will get you that amount of tech buying power, which will allow you then to buy these cards. And you can see how much they cost at the top. So this one here, the stock exchange is 2. These are 3, and this one's 4. Now, if you need to supplement this, you can either spend 2 money or an import token to get an extra tech buying power. Now, this is just telling you that however many gear numbers you have, that is what allows you to then buy the corresponding number of cards. So that's kind of just telling you that this is going to equal this. And then this last thing here tells you that if you have 3 tech cards already, so that means that when you are buying your 4th tech card or more, you're going to also have to spend 2 money or an import token to be able to make that purchase. So it's not per card, it's just any card that is your 4th card or more. You're going to also have to pay that 2 money or the import token. Now over here you've got the church, and you've got the church cards. So these cards are a way of scoring big endgame points. And as you can see, as you get up higher, they're going to score you more points at the end of the game. Some of them also have bonuses that you'll be able to take when you buy the card. So if you want to purchase one of these cards, you're going to go to the church. Again, it's a similar mechanic where you're going to spend a certain amount of power to get a certain amount of church buying power, and you can supplement this with resources. But this not equal sign means you can only use 1 of each resource. So for a copper, you could boost the power that you've played by 1. You could do the same with a silk, a money, a tea, a fish, or an import. But you can only do 1 of each kind. So you can't use 3 copper to get 3 different buying power, but you could use a copper, a silk, and a money to get 3 different buying power. Then you'll be able to purchase a card that matches the total buying power. You'll take it, you'll activate the bonus on it if there is one. There isn't one for this card. and you'll score at the end of the game the points that are listed on the bottom right corner. Now, there's a certain number of cards. There are 9 church cards total. So in any game, you're only going to put out 6, and then there'll be 3 cards that actually don't get placed out. I just put these up here to show you that there are a total of 9 cards, and that's what they look like. So they basically go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's a straight row, and then you're always going to put them out in numerical order. Now, last over here, we've got these power cards. Players will start usually with at least one of these. There are usually ways that you can buy these throughout the game. There are also these foreign agents. And over here, I don't know if this is in frame right now, but there are 4 times that you're going to be able to buy a foreign agent within the game. The first is as soon as you have 3 tech cards. So as soon as that happens, you'll be able to purchase a foreign agent. It's a one-time use. The first time you've fulfilled 3 orders. So once you have 3 orders fulfilled, you'll be able to pick up a foreign agent. The first time that you've flipped 2 of these import tokens over. So these import tokens, when you buy them, there'll be an opportunity, and it's even on the board where you purchase them. Sometimes you'll be able to flip these over. So when you're buying these import tokens, you'll always be able to flip at least one of them over when you do. And there'll be other times in the game when you can flip these over. Now, the reason that you want to flip these over is that at the end of the game, an import token like this will score 1 point, but an import token that's been flipped over will score you 4 points. So that's another way to score big points in this game, is to get a lot of these imports and flip them over. But once you flip 2 of them over, you get a foreign agent. The last time is once you have purchased your second church card. So if you own 2 or more church cards, you can buy a foreign agent. And again, these foreign agents will be one-time workers. So over the course of the game, you can potentially purchase up to 4 of them, and that'll give you 4 one-time workers. Now, also, let's talk about the port down here, because the port is how you get orders. And orders is a huge part of the game. So you are going to have a certain amount of power, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which will allow you to draw 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 order cards. So you're always keeping just one of these. But if you're going with 5 power or more, you'll get to pick up 5 different cards and keep 1. And the orders here are what you are fulfilling with the resources. So a large part of this game is resource management. So for instance, this order has a lot of resources on it. You've got a copper, 2 silk, and 3 tea. But once you have those in your inventory, you can fulfill this order and you'll score 7 points at the end of the game, and you'll also get an import token when you do that. A smaller one might be, say, this one. So this only costs 3 resources to fulfill, but it's only going to score you 4 points at the end of the game. So when you go to the port, you'll draw a certain number of these, and you'll be able to keep 1. However, much like the laboratory, which at the laboratory, remember, you could boost your tech power, for which you are buying tech cards, by 2 coins or an import token. You can do the same thing here. So if you pay 2 coins or an import token, you will be able to keep 2 of the cards that you've selected instead of just 1. And then the rest will go at the bottom of the order stack. Now, fulfilling orders is another big way to score points in the game. So in general, you're going to score your points in the game from fulfilling orders, those church cards, the tech cards, which are either going to have one-time uses, ongoing abilities, or endgame scoring points, and then finally for the buildings that you've built. Oh, one last thing. Remember how we said that when you went someplace, you blocked that area off so workers couldn't go there? There are 2 places where that doesn't happen. One is the port, because it has this infinity symbol on it, which means that any number of workers can go there. The other one is the laboratory up on the top left corner of the board, where you get your tech cards. So these places, any number of workers can go from both players. Now I suppose I should talk about what you actually do on your turn. You're just going to play one of your power cards, and I think I mentioned you have to do them in order, lowest to highest, over the course of the round. So you'll play a power card, you'll go to a space on the board, you'll take that action, and if you have, extra power, you can supplement it. if you go to this 5 spot, so if you have a lot of power, you'll do what is called the high power step of your turn. And that is going over and taking those bonuses that I showed you earlier. And then the last thing that you can do is you can build a building in the space that you're at. Now, if you build a shop, it's cheap. It's just 1 money. And what that means is that anytime that you go there in the future, you will get a 1 power bonus. So it's really good to just build those like mad. The trading houses are a little tougher to build. And you can only build 1 building at a time, which means you're building either a trading house or a shop. But if you build a trading house there, it's going to cost more money. In the future, it will also supplement your power when you go there by 1. But 2 things will come of that. Number 1, only 1 trading house can be built in any location. So any number of players can build shops. Both players can have shops built on a location. But only 1 player can have a trading house. And a trading house will also boost your power by 1. So if you happen to have a shop and a trading house built on a location, then when you go there in the future, your power will be boosted by 2. The other thing the trading house does is it creates a fee for your opponent. So if you have a trading house on a spot and your opponent goes there, they're going to have to pay you 1 money. And then again, at the end of the game, you will score points for all the shops and the trading houses that you've built. Now, at the end of your turn, after you've done all those things, you've taken your action, you've taken your high power bonus if you qualified for it, and you've built a building if that's something that you want to do, there are also several free actions you can do. You can fulfill these order cards. You can do as many of these as you want on your turn if you have the resources to fulfill them. You can hire a foreign agent if you have fulfilled the conditions that let you do that. Again, you have to have 3 technology cards, you have to have fulfilled 3 order cards, you have to have flipped 2 import tokens, or you have to own 2 or more church cards. And each one of those things will only let you hire 1 foreign agent. So you have up to 4 agents that you can purchase throughout the game. The third thing you can do as a free action is to use a foreign agent card. So once you have it, that'll give you an extra turn at some points in the game. And the last thing that you can do is use one of those technology cards. Those are the cards in the top left corner of the board. And remember, some of those tech cards are endgame scoring, but some of them are one-time abilities or ongoing abilities. So if you have a tech card that's a one-time ability, also on your turn, that's a free action that you can take. So first off, I should probably preface this saying I have not played the original Yokohama. I did pledge it the same time that I pledged Yokohama Duel, so I do own it. And at some point in the future, I'll be playing that, and whenever I review it, I can talk about how it compares to Yokohama Duel. So at this point in time, I can't tell you if Yokohama Duel is a good addition for you if you already have the original game, because the original game does play 2 to 4 players. So my experience and my talk about Yokohama Duel is really reserved just for Yokohama Duel itself. Now I can say that my fiance Kristen and I don't really love super competitive, kind of tight, ruthless games. And Yokohama Duel is kind of that sort of game. Nevertheless, we both really enjoyed it. And I think that speaks to the game itself. It is tight. There is a pretty hard competition for locations, but the game gives you just enough location spaces and some spaces that allow you to exchange resources. There's that one location where you can exchange resources for money and resources. So the game does provide you a way to get yourself out of a sticky situation if everything seems to be blocked. Not completely, but it does give you some ways to kind of mitigate the pain when you're getting locked out of locations. Now, 2-player exclusive games are tough for me because they can be often too light. They seem to court this experience for 2 players where it's a game that you're going to play in 60 minutes or less, or even 30 minutes or less. And sometimes in achieving that goal, the game feels like there just really aren't enough choices. That's not the case with Yokohama Duel. I feel there are really, really good choices to be made throughout this game, and I think the game length is perfect. It lasts for 4 rounds, and generally you're going to have 4 turns per round, although that can change when you get those secret agent cards. Now, the secret agent cards won't give you an extra turn because you're going to be using them as a bonus action, But what it can allow you to do is essentially take 2 turns, one right after the other. And that can really be a lifesaver in certain moments where you're trying to, do something at different locations that kind of chain off each other, and you don't want to have the opportunity to have your opponent get in there in between those 2 turns and do something that might block that. So getting those special agent turns won't give you an extra turn, but it will give you sort of a second turn piggybacked on the end of a first turn. It'll be sort of a double turn. And that does allow you to kind of help pull off some moves and do some things. But in general, 4 turns per round over 4 rounds in this game, the way that the board is, feels really good. It feels like it gives you enough game to kind of get things done, and it gives you enough turns to make choices to build up your engine, although I don't know if it's really an engine in this game, but achieve the goals that you're pursuing. I didn't feel when I was playing Yokohama Duel, as I do in some smaller 2-player games, that I kind of just gotten things going when the game abruptly ended, or that I was never really able to build something. Yokohama Duel definitely gives you the ability to feel fulfilled, I think, with the gameplay, win or lose. And as I said before, it does give you ways to kind of mitigate the pain of this, tightly constructed worker placement board, so that when things don't go your way, you do have actions that you can take to help yourself a little bit, even if it's not what you wanted to do ideally. I also think the way that they have the resources and the actions set up so that the stronger power that you play allows you to do a stronger action or get more resources. It's a good gameplay mechanic, and it works really well here. It causes you to have to make some pretty smart, clever, agile decisions. Now, I've currently rated the game a 7.5, and I'm not sure how that'll change over time. It may change after I play the original Yokohama. It's also possible once I play the original Yokohama, I may not see a reason for Duel. It's always going to be a great option if you're only playing 2 players, right? If the majority of your gaming is done with you and one other player, why not buy Yokohama Duel, and then you don't have to bother with the bigger game that plays 3 and 4 players. However, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet how it's going to compare to the 2-player game in the original. And that's sort of a question for myself in the future once I get to playing that original game. But as for this version, right now, I give it a 7.5, and I like it, and it's something that I see myself playing again. And it is a game that I plan on keeping in my collection for the foreseeable future. And I think it provides a really good experience for that 2-player game. So if you're looking for good 2-player games, this is one of the best, I think, that I've played. And in the 2-player games that I have in my collection, right now, this is probably the last one that I would get rid of. This is the one that I probably would keep the most. And Patchwork, which is a different sort of game and also a great 2-player game. But between those two, I think you have a couple of really good options. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it proved helpful to you. And again, if you haven't liked and subscribed yet, please consider doing that. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.